Are you looking for an LGBTQ friendly and affirming Christian church in Salt Lake City? If so, I have great news for you. I have found about 13 Christian churches in the Salt Lake City area so far. And the first one I want to tell you about today that I visited recently is the First Baptist Church in Salt Lake City. This is a fantastic church, and I can't wait to tell you all about it so you'll know what you're getting into before you go into the church. But I highly recommend visiting this church if you're looking for a good Christian church, good, solid Christian, and also solidly LGBTQ affirming. So, when my first impression going into this church, it was very welcoming, very friendly, very diverse. There are people, young people, old people, there are queer people, there's people of different colors and ethnic backgrounds, people of different, maybe socioeconomic status. So, and I loved what they did at the beginning of the church service, the call to worship that we read from is this. They said, wherever you are coming from and wherever you are going, you belong. Whatever your background, whatever your race or your ethnicity, you belong. Whoever you love, whatever your sexual orientation, you belong. Whatever your gender expression, you belong. Whatever your nationality or legal status, you belong. Whatever your abilities, you belong. Whatever generation you come from, you belong. Wherever you lay your head at night, you belong. Whether you are a longtime Christian or a spiritual seeker, you belong. If you are here this morning, you belong. So I thought that was a beautiful welcome that we all said together as the church service started. There were uh, clearly gay people who were serving in the choir and other ministry. This was in the announcements. They announced quite a lot of activities, weekly activities. They have Bible studies, they have charity events. This seems like a church that is very active in helping the community. They announced an event that they were going to be having swords to plowshares, where they were going to invite people to bring their guns, and they were going to have a blacksmith that melts down the metal from the guns and makes it into garden tools. So I thought that was wonderful. They have some uh, things that they were doing. Some women were sewing for some people in need in other countries. There were just great events for youth and children that were announced. So very wonderful. Great. If you grew up in I grew up in a Baptist church, so this Baptist church was very familiar to me in so many ways as far as what they do during the church service. One thing I loved is that they did a children's message. So they brought forward all the children and they gave a little children's message, which was something that happened at my church when I was growing up. And, that's cute and wonderful and just great. They had a great choir that sung. They had also some contemporary music with, a band. And so they had a great mix of music. I also have to say, this church is gorgeous. The decorations, the decor of this church is just so stunning. It's very colorful. There's it's painted gold, and there's beautiful stained glass, just beautiful, colorful banners and different things around the church. So I loved the way this church looked. It was beautiful. As far as congregation size, I would say it's hard to gauge on one Sunday morning how many people actually attend the church, but I'm guessing it's between 100 and 200. So it's a good sized church for there to be these activities. And but it's small enough that you could probably get to know everybody there. And let's see what else. The sermon. I have to tell you, the sermon I heard at that church was the best sermon I've heard in a few years. So I really thought the pastor he did a great sermon. It was really wonderful, very Christ focused, and very spirit filled. So I loved the sermon. And I say that as someone who I'm a Christian minister. I've heard a lot of sermons. I've spent most of my adult life in church. So I was actually impressed by the sermon. And so I highly recommend this church. Another thing I want to say about it is the fellowship. You know, people were very friendly, and after the church service they invited us, and I think this is a very regular thing that they have coffee after the church service, and coffee and donuts, and so we were hanging out talking to some of the people from the church, and there's people who have been attending that church for their entire lives. So there's a lot of people at the church who've been there for many years and who have a long history with the church, as well as some newer people who sought out the church because they were looking for a place where they could belong as a family with an LGBTQ member. And this church has been a blessing to them. I highly recommend the First Baptist Church of Salt Lake City. I have nothing bad to say about this church. It was beautiful, and I get the feeling that they really have a pulse on what Jesus Christ is doing in the world, and they are right on board with that. Loving God, loving neighbor, and really being active in the community with caring for others and outreach and just being good to one another. So, and very inclusive. So you will feel very welcomed at the First Baptist Church in Salt Lake City. Hope you check it out. Thanks. And if you want to find out more about affirming churches in Salt Lake City area, subscribe to this channel and look out for my next church recommendations. Thanks for watching.
His own self for heavenly food.